coming from the bottom to the front to the top, at the back, I just ease that hook in the back of the crab, and then I take my finger and I help to push it in there just a little bit so the hook barely comes through the tip of the crab. There's no PETA people here, is there? Y'all be like, oh, it's thick as real crab. No, never mind. So you want the tip of that hook to be showing, but I want the barb of the hook to be left inside the crab. And the reason for that is that way the crab isn't sliding all up and down the shank of that hook. And you'll notice that this crab, you see, everybody can see his legs are still moving around good. It really doesn't hurt them at all. And when they're down there, they'll move around, and it acts just like a normal, very live, natural bait. It doesn't inhibit the way they move, having them hooked just like that. Now I said, what happens when you start getting smaller ones in the area? Or if you start coming up, you're losing a lot of crabs, what can you do? Okay? Am I running too long? Make sure. If I start to get close to that hour, once I stomp their foot or something like that. Chomp onto it like this, and once they get it, hopefully that little point of that hook is going to catch just enough of that sheep head to where it's going to hook itself. Okay? But you're going to want to give it a little bit of a jerk to try and get it to set into the flesh a little bit farther. With the smaller ones, if you're coming up like, and you're not sure, and you see the crab is half bitten, and all you're getting are the inside sucked out, and you're not feeling anything, go ahead and move that hook more into the center of the crab. It will kill the crab faster. This crab right here can stay alive on the hook for the better part of 2 hours, and it won't die sitting there like that. So if you go from spot to spot, you can actually leave that crab on there, and he's hanging on just good. But you go and you stick them in, you start going up into the shell or into the body of the crab anymore like that, and it will kill them a lot faster. With smaller ones, you might want to think about taking that big hook, the big claw. That'll help a lot. People say, well, what, Rich? Why do you have this cricket bucket up here? This is the best thing in the world to keep your fiddler crabs.
Nice, Martin.
I keep fiddler crabs on my boat, right in this container, for up to 3 weeks at a time. Do I feed them? No. If they get hungry, they're going to eat each other. Yeah, that's cruel. That don't sound very Christian-like, but, we get hungry enough, it's a crab. Okay. Typically, I have a place in my boat that one of the wells, it stays damp. So if you get a live well or something like that, that has just a little bit of dampness in it all the time, or, put this in that well. And just the dampness is enough water for these crabs to stay alive. Otherwise, if you keep them in a 5-gallon bucket or something like that, you have to keep water on them crabs. And they need to be rinsed out every so often, because what happens is if you get that little bit of water in the bottom of your 5-gallon bucket and they start pooping in it, they're rolling around in poopy water, and they don't pick the lid very well in poopy water. So you're going to need to change that water out and get fresh water in there on a daily basis, and that's something that I particularly don't like to do. And with this, what they can do is they actually, if you see them, they're crawling up the side. See how most of them are stuck here? And you hear me go like that, I can bang them once when I want to get a hold of them, and they fall off the side and they go down to the bottom and I can get a hold of them. The rest of the time, they're crawling up on the sides, and you'd be surprised. You can keep 2 pints of crabs in one of these small containers. If you go to some tackle stores, I know Hadro Point sells these plastic ones just like this. You want to make sure you don't get the cricket baskets with the wire mesh siding. Because the wire mesh siding, anybody that knows salt water knows that anything metal is going to be destroyed by the salt water and it won't last very long. Man, I've had a couple of these baskets for years and they work that good. They can't get out of here unless you pull the little white thing out. So that's just a nice little trick of the trade right there. Okay, so far we've covered the how to fish for them, the life cycle of the sheephead, a little bit of the different places to fish for them, be it like out at the R8 and some of the nearshore reefs. The nearshore reef off of Charleston is good. A lot of hang-ups, a lot of sea bass, pain in the... Thank you, that's a good word. I like that. And then we've got the ones that are inshore. Now, there is a fallacy that says that, you know, all the sheephead move offshore during the wintertime. That's not true. Once you get your little camera and you start going around and you start dropping that thing around some of those docks and you look at some of the sheephead that are down in there, you will be surprised at how many sheephead stay inshore. That 14-pounder I told you about I caught was caught in February. Inshore. I'll even tell you, it was in near Hamlin Creek, off the Intercoastal Waterway, off one of a piling off of somebody's dock. Okay. If for some reason you are around some of those docks and things like that, and you start to run out of baits or the fiddler crabs aren't working, try using the chum as your bait. Okay, take little oil, you know, go get you some oysters and knock the oyster shell. You can take an oyster knife versus trying to, you know, shuck it like the professionals do. Just take a screwdriver that you're supposed to have on board anyway in case you break down. Take the heavy end of the screwdriver and whack the shell of the oyster, and trust me, it'll break right open and you can get to the meat, and you put that the best way you can on the hook. Now, is this the best hook for that? Not necessarily. What I do, and if you look at the law, it is not stated that, it does not say anything about using a treble hook. Okay? So, what I do, when I'm using bait like a oyster or a clam or something like that, especially oysters, has anybody ever tried using oysters before? Anyone? Bueller? They come off the hook really easy. Okay? One little slurp and gone. You put it on one of these little treble hooks like this, about that size, and you drape it around there as many times as possible. Let that sheephead suck that in, and he gonna have trouble. Guaranteed. Not the best way, I don't think, for using for hooking the crabs. I particularly prefer the one hook method for the crab, but if you're having to use, especially if you got the children on board and you know they're having a little bit of trouble, you know, getting the hook set down and stuff like that, they're just starting out, you know, go ahead and hook up a treble hook. How do you know which dock is better than other docks? That's the biggest thing people always ask me. Captain Rich, how do I decide which docks are going to be better to fish than others? Typically, when you're navigating the intercoastal or the inland waterways of Charleston, you have points and pockets. Okay? Points are shallow, pockets are deep. Okay? So what I like to do is I find docks that extend into deeper water. What does deeper water mean? Okay, well, if you've got a flat and, you know, most every dock in there is at, you know, 2 foot of water, and I've got one dock that is on a bend, and it's sitting in 10 foot of water, I guarantee you them sheephead are going to be on that dock in 10 foot of water. Okay? Once again, that little telltale camera can do a lot. And I'm telling you, it's when you're trying to figure out where to go and how to catch them, that's the deal. Finding docks that have oyster beds near them, around them, are key. The sheephead hang around oyster beds. Okay? If any of you fish for redfish and you go up on the flats and you're poling around, or you're like me, I use a trolling motor for everything because I got a bad back, or else I get one of my mates to pole. I'll see sheephead all the time up on the flats and stuff like that. But when they move out, when the water's away, that's why we usually fish them in lower end water, usually 2 hours on each side of the low tide is best for fishing for the sheephead. That is the best time. Oyster shells around docks. Bring your own chum. Sometimes dock owners, and a lot of times, you know, if you ask somebody first, or you find out who owns the dock, they really, if you know, they'll let you tie up there if you ask them first. If you just go rolling up on there and tying up to their dock, they sometimes don't get very too happy about that. So just be prepared for that. Tying different knots. One of the main knots I like to use, one of the main hooks I like to use is an octopus hook, like this. And I know I'm almost out of time, so I'm going to run through this knot real quick. It's called snelling a hook. And if you don't know how to snell a hook, when we're done with this, I'll be more than happy to show you that and the blood knot. But you can snell a hook, and this hook that you'll see right here is snelled. And what that basically is it runs the knot, has a bunch of loops, looks like it comes out of the factory basically. And it keeps the knot, it doesn't lose any of its strength. Okay, there's no real major twists and stuff that degrade the knot. Other than that, we covered the bait, covered everything. If you have any questions, now's the time to ask. So, because I like to leave the last 10 minutes open for somebody, because the question you may have, someone else might have.
What size hooks?
What size hooks? Thank you. Usually a 1/0 on the
circle.
When you're using the circle hooks or the improved circle hook, the 1/0 hook is best. If you have a lot smaller fish and the crabs are a lot smaller, you can drop that down to a size 1. But a 1/0 is normally the size that I like to use. On the treble hooks, size 10.
What method do you use to catch the fiddlers?
I use the Greg, get out your boat and go chase him down method. There's Greg back there, by the way. Hey, Greg. Greg, get out chasing. No, anyway. I find an area on the land and the marsh that has a mixture of sand and mud and grass. Okay. You know, in Charleston, everybody knows that the fluff mud can take one step out and you're in the wrong place. You're going, that get ugly quick. But there are some areas that you can run around and really on a low tide, you can get out of the boat. Here's an important thing. If you're going to do this, if you're going to get out of your boat, make sure that you have your boat secured properly, that you don't need to go swimming for your boat. I can't tell you how many times I've come by Drum Island and I've got somebody, no, I do stop. thing to do. But I find a place and I'll anchor the boat off, and then I'll, walk in a little bit. And usually I'll take a 5-gallon bucket. People say, why do you take a 5-gallon bucket? Why not take that? Because as I'm reaching down and I'm, they're running around, I'm just scooping them up and I'm throwing them in. I want a bucket that's this big and I don't have to try and aim into a little hole this big, There are other methods that I don't condone using. The dig a hole in the ground, put the bucket in the board method. The Department of Natural Resources said we're not supposed to teach that method because you're digging into the marsh. And they don't like that. So I don't teach that anymore, but the way they used to do it was they would dig a hole and they'd put a bucket and 2 boards, and then they would herd the fiddlers, and then all the fiddlers would hit the boards and run right into the bucket. And it really does work. But I didn't teach that. I didn't teach that. No, don't tell me about that. Stop taking film, man. I want to see this on YouTube.
That's where it's going.
Anybody else?
Does the size make any difference?
The size of the fiddler? And I really like to use the size with the fish that I'm catching. If it's got too big a fiddler and they're smaller sheephead, and you got the kids on board, I want the kids to catch the fish. I want those small sheephead back. By the way, they are going to be coming up with a law here pretty soon. Sheephead are going to need to be 12 inches foreplane. It's coming. So right now there is no size limit on them. You can keep 20 per day, but I like to use the size crab with the size fish that I'm typically. If I've got the 2.5 on up, I use the largest fiddler I can get.
Are you able to catch fiddlers this time of year?
I am. On a warm day like this, I can go out there, and I've got some spots that I've scouted. I can go out there. There are times where we get cold snaps, where, when it gets super cold, that they go deep. And I don't care, you go out there with a backhoe attached to the shear water, it ain't gonna happen. You ain't finding them goats. But you can use like a little hand shovel, hand trowel, or even a screwdriver. And a lot of times if they beat you to the hole, or they'll just be kind of hanging out the holes, you can kind of stick that screwdriver down there and they pop out the hole. Good this time of year. Yes, sir, you have.
How does that yellow claw fiddle, that ball is black, yellow claw?
They will bite either. That's a good question. The ones that I don't use are the ones with the soft shell. You got them brown, kind of flat, real skinny ones. These are called Chinabacks right here. They got a little bit of purple on them. Those are the best. I don't know why, but they work best. The ones with the yellow claw, the only reason I don't prefer using them is because they have a black body. And if they have a black body, they tend to blend into the bottom easier than this will. But if you're moving it around like you're supposed to, jiggling it every now and then, it shouldn't make a difference. Yes, sir.
What's those cameras you're talking about? What will they run?
They run you about $200 to $300. It's expensive, but I mean it can take a lot of the guesswork out of figuring out how to do it. If you would like to learn how to do it firsthand, sheephead fishing, to me, I've got some captains that, that's all they like to do is redfish. Riddell Charters is one of the largest charter companies in Charleston. Thanks to the good Lord. We do specialize in different kinds of fishing. To me, red fishing is easy, especially this time of the year. Red fishing is easy. You go out there and catch sheephead, that takes a little bit more instruction. We are good at doing all of them. For $300 that we charge to take you out on a 4-hour day, we're going to make sure that, number one, you either get on the redfish or the sheephead or whatever fish you want to, but it's going to be the most instructional day you have, because we don't play I got a secret. Okay? I'm not going to take you to spots that because I know you're local. I wouldn't take someone else there. Okay? So we do teach fishing. We enjoy teaching fishing. And it can take a lot of the guesswork out of figuring out how to do all this, because I'm sure there's about a dozen things I missed talking about that I would like to.
Which area do you fish?
I usually, we fish all over. Typically, you'll find us in the Cooper, in the Wando, and the northern entrance of the Intercoastal Waterway.
You ever do anything down in the north end?
No. Not really. And, you know, the reason is, the Cooper River and the Wando and that portion of the Intercoastal, you specialize in being good in one area. And trying to be good in Kiowa and good in Hilton Head and good in Charleston and this, that, and the other thing. I'd rather be great here than just good there. Anybody else? Okay, well, if you'd like a card, we've got some up here or in the back. My wife and